now we're ready to rig another part of the character. And in this case, I want to turn my attention towards the goggles that the character is wearing. So let's unhide the geo for all of that. It's up to here. Okay. And let's see how we're gonna rig these guys. Now, the rigging of props normally has to come directly from the production's need. Basically, this means that obviously your time as a rigger is pretty limited, and you have to deliver your assets in time for production to begin animating. So you should not spend time rigging anything that is not absolutely needed in animation. And animation is going to be driven by either a script or an animatic or something like that. So just by looking at the source material of what the character is going to be doing, you should be able to tell what needs to be rigged and how. So for example, if the goggles of the character are to stay on his face like this all the time, then I can just take the entire set of geometry and attach it to a weight container and bind that to the head joint, and I could be done with it. That, like, they are staying there. There's nothing that is going to be happening to these goggles. However, it could be that the character has to wear them on his eyes or take them off and play with them on one of his fingers. It could be a multitude of things. So this is what will tell you how you need to rig things. Now, I'm going to go midway here, and I'm not going to rig them so that the character can take them off and do stuff with them. That's going to be a more complicated rig to do. But I'm going to rig them so that he can at least wear the goggles on his eyes. Okay, so he can move them over his eyes and move them back to his forehead. And that should be enough for this exercise. I'm sure that you can figure out at this point in the course other ways of rigging this so that the character can do more things with them. But let's take a look at how we would rig them so they can move. The first thing I'm going to do is I definitely don't need all these as separate pieces because the goggles are not going to disassemble. Again, I'm assuming that that's the mandate of the production. So all I'm going to do is first attach all these pieces together into a single mesh item. So let's take these guys. I'm going to keep these guys separate for now because I might rig them differently later. But for now, I'm going to take these guys and just merge the meshes with transform compensation on, and I'm going to change the name of the resulting mesh, and there you go. So we have our final mesh. Now, how am I going to go about animating them? Well, I'm going to have two levels of controls. There's going to be one control to move the entire goggle to wherever it needs to go. And also going to give it a couple of controls on the sides so they can tilt in case a character has to like tilt them forward and backwards from either side as he is moving them around, something like that, to make them a little bit more flexible in how they can be animated and not just something that goes down on his eyes and up on his forehead. That would be kind of boring. So let's do that. As for the strap, as I said, I'm going to limit this to the strap being on his head at all times. So I'm going to definitely anchor it to his head on the back and the sides. And I'm going to give the rest of the strap a little bit of wiggle room so it can stretch as he pulls the goggles forward and back. So let's get all this done. I'm going to start with the controls for this part of the goggles, like the glasses. So let's go down to our advanced, not the advanced, where is the gear rigs. Okay, I'm gonna create a new group locator for it, and let's call it group C goggles. All right, and I'm gonna add a new locator to the scene and bring it into that group, and let's move it up. And forward, I want it to be more or less in the middle of the goggles. I don't have to go super crazy about it, but so let's say there, okay? And I'm also going to rotate it so that it's more or less oriented in the same way as the goggles are. And I'm going to move it down like so. There you go. Perfect. So we're going to start from that. And this guy is going to be our control center goggles. Okay. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to create from that the deformer, and I'm going to change its display to a sphere. And he's going to be right there. And for the control, I'm going to change that into a plane. Like so. Okay. And I'm going to maybe offset it a little bit forward so it's easier to grab. There you go. Now I'm going to create the controls for the sides of the goggle so they can tilt. So I'm going to duplicate that twice, and one is going to be the right side and one is going to be the left side. Actually, I'm just going to duplicate once, and I'm going to show you why in a moment. I'm going to move this guy to this side and change its display property to be a circle. Make him smaller. Let's say something like that. And now I am going to duplicate him and just transfer this to the opposite side on the x-axis. And this guy is going to be left. Okay. So there they are, our two controls. And I'm going to make them children of the main goggles control. This one right here. Okay. Now we take everything and we zero out their transforms. Done. So we have the controls we need. We have tilting on one side, tilting on the other, and then our main control. Okay. So now let's do the actual tilt and rig. I'm going to take the deformer, going to duplicate that, and I'm going to call this guy rig, and it has to be on the right side. So let's move him over to this side of the mesh, and this is a point from which the goggles are going to tilt, and its display is going to be the default. I am only going to make him smaller, and now I'm going to duplicate that and get the one for the left side, and again just transfer it to the other side of the character, and that's great. Now I'm gonna take both and zero their transforms out too. I'm not gonna zero out the deformer, it's not necessary. So how do we get this to tilt the way we need it? Well, normally you could easily do this in other applications by using a 2-joint IK chain. However, the IK chains in Modo do not support 2 joints. At least the let's go to IK. the normal IK chain, the dual 2D IK chain, doesn't support it. It requires 3 joints to work, and full body IK would be a little bit of overkill to do what we're trying to do here, which is actually quite simple. So there's another way of doing it, and that is using a direction constraint. So I'm going to grab this guy and then the other locator, and let's go to modifiers, turn off compensation, and create a direction constraint. Okay, and I'm going to set the direction to use the x-axis, so the locator goes back to the way it was. So now he's going to be looking at the other locator at all times, which means that if I move it, as you can see, it rotates in the correct direction. And if I grab this guy, same thing, it's rotating. So we have this line between both, which is the actual orientation that we want the goggles mesh to have. Okay, now here's an interesting thing. You'll see that this guy rotated back to be straight up, and that's because the direction constraint is using the y-axis as its up vector. So the up vector is the world y up, so that's why he is oriented that way. So to get back the orientation that it had, I'm just going to create an up vector out of this guy. Let's duplicate him, and let's create an up vector. Okay, and I'm going to change the shape to our up vector official shape, at least for me, which is a pyramid. Gonna make him smaller and pointing up in y, and then I'm gonna move it up. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my constraint locator, select the direction constraint, shift select the pyramid, and assign it as the up vector, and that puts back our locator in its correct orientation, as you can see. Okay, now that we have the rig working, we have to see how we're going to get things to rotate properly. So in this case, it's actually quite easy. All I have to do is take our deformer here and dynamically parent it to this locator right there. So let's go to setup and turn on compensation and add a dynamic parent constraint. So now when we move this, you can see the rotation right there. And if I move this one, same thing, right? And now all that's left is to take our locators and again dynamically parent them to the respective controls with, of course, compensation on. And the rig is pretty much done. Okay. So if I take my control right there, everything moves. If I take this control right here, it moves like that. And if I take this control right here, this one, it moves like that. So now to get the goggles to follow, it's actually quite easy. We just have to connect them to, like the geo to this deformer using a weight container like we've done before. And that should be all we need to do. So let's do that. Let's go to the props workspace, and I'm going to add this deformer. I'm gonna get rid of the, well, not get rid, just hide those dynamic parents constraints, and I'm going to add, so this is the deformer, the geometry. Okay. All right. And now let's create a weight container, and we're gonna call him weight container center goggles, and let's put him in the weight containers group locator and bring him into the schematic. Okay, so far so good. Now what we're going to do is connect the geometry onto the container, and then select the geometry, go into vertex component mode. Let's select all the vertices and make sure our container is selected and add those points. Now that completes this part of the rig. Now we just need to add a general influence to our container. I'm going to go into setup mode to do all my wiring. Okay, let's call it general influence goggles. And we're going to use the deformer as the effector to drive this weight container. And that's all. So let's see what we have. We move this. All the goggles move. Okay. We move this guy. They can tilt on the other side. And we move this guy. And they can tilt on the opposite end. Plus they move. That's something that we can't really help too much because that's the way the constraint is working. So that part is done. We have our goggles completely rigged. Now all that's left is we have to make sure that they follow the head too. So let's bring our neck head rig right there. And I'm going to take the main control for the goggles. And I'm going to dynamically parent it to the head control. Okay, and I'm going to take the up vector and dynamically parent it to the head joint. So that way, when the head rotates, the up vector stays aligned with it. So now I can rotate my head, and the goggles come along for the ride. Cool. All right, we can hide this for a second. So the only thing that's left is to do the strap, and I'm gonna do that one in the next video. All right, so let's rig the strap for these goggles, and this is going to be actually quite easy to do. We're going to create basically the same rig that we created for the ammo right here. We're going to create it for the strap, and I'm going to give it 2 attach points, one on this side and one on this side. I only need 2 because actually the weight of these is going to extend all the way to the back of the head, so I really don't need a third one back here. We should be okay with 2. So let's see where we need to attach our locators. I think I'm gonna go for this edge right there. So let's take a look at the numbers for that edge, and I can see it's 864 and 1018. And let's look at the opposite side of the head, which is this edge right there. This one is 1301 and 1530. Okay, and of course I'm going to create the up vectors. It's exactly the same rig that you've seen over here already. So I'm not going to keep you around for this one. You already know how to do it. I'm going to come back when they are already in place. So give me just a second. Okay, I'm done. As you can see, I have here my little rig attached to the head, and it's the same one. We have a locator looking at this other guy and this guy as its up vector, everything attached to the head of the character, so that's not going to move. And this is the objects that I created. Again, same thing, constraint object, the locator, and up vector, etc. Now we need the actual deformers that are going to be doing all the work for this guy. So let's create a couple of additional locators. I'm going to create one, bring it into the group. Yeah, here he is. And this guy is going to be the former right Goggle Strap, and we're going to create one for the left side. Well, first let's just get this guy at the right location. So I'm going to match its position over to our main locator right there, and let's change its display properties to, again, a sphere. That's going to be sitting right there. Okay, as you can see, I hit the strap just so that I could more easily work. And let's move a duplicate to the opposite side of the head. There we are. Okay, and now all we have to do with these guys is dynamically parent them to these locators right there. So let's go set up compensation. This guy is going to be dynamically parented to our locator on this side. And now we take this guy and dynamically parent it to this locator on this side. Okay. All right. So far, so good. You can see that they're definitely following. All right. So let's weight our strap towards these two guys, okay? Let's unhide it again. There we go. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to create a couple of weight containers. And we're going to call them so one is going to be weight container right Goggle Strap, and the other one is going to be weight container left Goggle Strap. Okay, let's bring both in, and we connect the geometry to both. Okay, there we go. Now I'm gonna need another deformer to get this part to stretch and realign itself towards an extra object here in the scene. And I'm gonna do that by attaching a locator to the goggle geometry and just have that influence this part of the strap so it pulls it over with him and gets it to rotate. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create another two locators, well, one for now. And I'm gonna call this guy Goggle Strap attach. Okay, and duplicate it and do the one on the left side. So let's take this guy and I'm gonna attach it to this vertex right there. So let's see what vertex number that is. That's number 233. And then for the other side, we're going to use vertex number 60. All right, so let's go ahead and take our first locator. Oh, they're already in here. The one for the right side, and select the geo, no compensation, and we add, in this case, a vertex position constraint. Okay, and we have to add, let's say we said 233. There you go. Now, this guy is still going to be rotating around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try something different this time to not have to add all the rig that we've done before. Let's try with another constraint. I'm going to select this guy. And this one is going to be a vertex normal constraint. Okay, so that will keep this locator aligned to the normal of this vertex at all times. Now, I'm able to get away with this trick because the googles are not going to deform. They're not deforming. They're a rigid object. So I can be confident that their geometry is not going to be changing, therefore affecting the direction that the locator is pointing on. So he's always going to point in that direction. So now if I rotate the control, for example, I should see the locator oops, what did I grab? That's not working for us. Looks like let's check the parameters of the constraint to see if there's anything in there that could help us. So we have here it is. Let's find its vertex normal constraint. Now, it appears there is nothing that we can do with that. And also we're missing some rotations here. So we're going to take a look at that in a second. And that is because our friend here is using a different up vector than what we want, which is this guy. So we need to actually, let's fix this right away. To get this to work, the up vector needs to be actually parented to this control object. So we're going to delete the dynamic parent, and we're just going to move it as a child of this control object. There you go. And let's zero everything on him. And now things should rotate perfectly from here. There you go. That's better. Good. Now let's go back to our locator here on the side of the goggles. Sometimes you need to click on a different axis to get it to select. So definitely the vertex normal constraint didn't quite work for us. So let's get rid of that. So we're going to have to create the same little rig we've done before for this guy. So let's see. Where am I going to attach to and from? I think I can do one up here. And the other one, well, we'll have to go, I guess, here, this guy, this vertex. So we're going to add its look at target is going to be over here, and its up vector, it's going to be over there. Okay. I guess, again, I won't keep you to see this. It's the same rig we've done before with 2 extra items. So I'll do it and be back in a second. Okay, I'm done. Here it is, little rig. Same thing, let's call it the attachment ring that we've been using so far. There it is on the right side of the character. So all we need is the deformers for this side too. So let's get those and attach them to the side of the head. I'm gonna create a new locator. Let's bring it into the group. And we're going to call this guy deformer, right side, Goggle Strap attach. And I'm going to match it in position to locator over here. And let's change its display again to a sphere. There you go. And now I'm going to duplicate it and match the duplicate to the other side right there. Let's rename it to left side. All right, there they are. Now we need to attach these guys. Let's see what's going on there. Okay, looks like we have a little rotation here on the goggles. Let's see if it's the, no, it's not the control. It's our friend here. No, that's not it. Let's see what's going on and fix that before it causes any more trouble. It's definitely this object. So let's check its channels. That's interesting. I don't see anything changing there. Gonna go back into setup mode. Let's find it. I'm gonna get rid of the dynamic parent for a second. There you go. Gonna try that again. This guy to this guy. Add parent. Okay, things now look okay. There's also a little rotation on this guy. We're gonna check it out in a second. Now that this changed, I need to rematch this guy's position onto the locator. Same thing for the other side for sure. There you go. Now I can go back into setup mode and dynamically parent them. Let's go out of setup mode and everything looks okay. I'm gonna just take a quick look at this guy. Let's see what's going on with him. And this little rotation that he has. Nothing out of the ordinary here. Oh, it's the up vector. Let's see what's going on with him. Yeah, something he didn't really like when I changed the parenting, changed something in the setup mode. So let's see what values we have here. This should be 0 on X and then 58.8 millimeters on Y. So yeah, we have these values right there. So let's just enter them manually. 58.8 millimeters on this secondary transform channel and 0 the rest. There you go. And some rotations there. Let's see. This should be 0. All right. We're good now. Okay, so now that this is done, let's check our rig here. I want to move this guy. Okay, that's good. Everything is coming together. Perfect. Now we can start adding the deformations for the strap. So we have here our 2 weight containers, one for each side of the head, and we need to add points to them. Okay, and in this case what I'm going to do is I'm going to add all the points from one side up to the middle to one of these deformers, and then the other side to the other one, and they're going to overlap in the middle, but because we're going to put both influences in a normalizing folder, that should not cause a problem. So let's select our first locator, let's say for the right side, and the strap, and let's do this in wire display mode. Go into vertex component mode, select all the vertices, and let's add the points to this weight container. And now let's add all the points on the left side, and shift select our other container and add those points right there. Okay, and we're also going to add the points to two other containers we're going to create. So now we need another 2 weight containers. This one right here is going to be called weight container right strap attach, and this one is going to be left side. Okay, let's add both to the schematic. Let's see what we got. They got assigned with some points that we don't really need. So what I'm going to do is, this is for the left side. Let's select the points we want to keep, which are these. Actually, not even those, just from here and up. And I'm gonna invert the selection, which is all the rest, and remove those points from the container. Now I'm gonna do the same thing for the opposite side. With this guy, I'm gonna select the points I want to keep. Try this, select invert, and remove those points. Okay. Things are working so far. So now it's time to add the actual influences. Let's move this a little bit downwards to give us some space, because we are about to bring more objects into the setup. So let's begin with this guy right here, a general influence to it. We're going to call it general influence left side Goggle Strap. Now this guy, general influence right side Goggle Strap. Let's do him. Left side. Let's strap attach. And lastly, this one. Right side. Okay. We're good. So all we need to do now is bring in the items we're going to use to drive the transforms on these influences. So let's go get these 2 deformers and these 2 deformers. Okay, there they are. Some dynamic parents that we don't need. Hide those. So let's see, this is the right strap attach, goes here. The left one goes here. The left Goggle Strap comes here. The right Goggle Strap goes there. Is that it? Left, left. Yeah, it looks like everything is properly set. So let's go into setup mode and do our connections. And let's see what this will do. Yep, our strap is stretching. It's not yet stretching the way we want it to stretch. As you can see, it's just basically pulling all the vertices completely. So we just need to weight this properly, and that's going to be what we need to do. First things first, I'm going to put these influences in a normalizing folder because that could actually help. Let's see what's going on. Let's go to the form tab. As you can see that right there, I'm going to add a normalizing folder, and we're going to call it normalizing folder goggles, and let's put everything in there. Okay, now we lost some of the pull on the front vertices, so we just need to weight those properly. So for example, this guy right here should definitely not be influencing those vertices right there. So I'm going to do the same, just select those vertices and remove those points, and you'll see it pop back to its appropriate position. And let's do the same for the weight container on the other side. Should not be influencing these points right there. So let's do that. Oops, I don't want to get the other side. And where there he is, remove points. Okay. Now we still need weight on these guys a little bit more than what they have. So let's do that. Let's go again to vertex component, actually edge component mode. Let's double click on that loop, and let's go into our weighting tab and adjust those weights to less than 0. As you can see, we want them to be a lot closer to the front right there. So in this case, maybe 20%. It's going to be okay, and let's do the same for this other edge loop right there. 40%. So 40 and 20. And now let's do the same for the other strap. This guy's going to be weighted to 20, and this guy's going to be weighted 40%. There you go. Test that out again. Now we have this interesting problem right there. Let's work on the shape of that. This shape right here. So let's take a look again at our weights. Yeah, maybe this guy should have a little bit more weight on it. I'm gonna position these guys as if he was wearing them. Well, that doesn't look all that bad. Yeah, this guy needs to have more weight towards the back. So let's try that again. Let's adjust the weight of this to 60% maybe. And I can actually try to compensate. Well, no, it actually is not going to do me any good, because anyway, everything is getting renormalized. So well, let's do that. 20 for this guy, and it was no, this guy. Oh, 100, 80. 80 and 20 for the other weight container. So now let's take care of this side. Oh, we can't even see it. It went inside of the hair. Let's see. There it is. Okay. So it's going to be 20 for the front attached strap, which is this one. Is that it? No, this is the left side. There you go. Or 80. Let's do 20. Yes, it's 20 for this guy and 80 for this guy. Oh, there you go. It has 80 already. Okay. Looks like that does it for our strap. Now our character can take his goggles on and off as he pleases. And the only thing left is our two meshes right here. I'm going to see if I don't have, to avoid rigging them, I can just dynamically parent them to the deformers we have here, and that would be the end of it. So let's give that a shot. Select that, our little deformer right there, and dynamically parent it. And then for the other side, add parent, and that should be it. Let's see how this behaves. If I move it, that looks okay. If I rotate it, oh, that looks fine. Again, I'm doing a fairly simple rig here. If we needed these parts of the strap to also come wider, then yes, I would need to make these guys tilt. But I'm not going to go there. This is pretty much everything we need to have our goggles finished. Let's do a little bit of cleanup here. Let's take our weight containers and move them to the other weight containers deformation folder. And we have this general influence goggles. That doesn't go in any folder. Maybe in the formation folder props. Let's put it there. There you go. And we're done with the goggles for our character. So now he can definitely wear those. I still have a weight container selected somewhere. Where is it? Let's go here. We also need to take these guys and move them over to the weight containers. Right there. There you go. All right. So that's our rig for the character's goggles. And now we can keep on going with the rest of the accessories this character is wearing. So let's go.